Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Group B's presentation. For the next 25 minutes, I would like to invite you to join us on a journey of exploration under the topic of consumerism versus environmentalism. With the stepping into the digital era, advancements in information and communication technologies have increased consumer awareness of ethics, morality, human welfare, and environmental issues. Today's consumer is aware of the environmental impact of business operations and those of the products and services they are buying and consuming. Consequently, consumers can avoid buying products incompatible with their environmental ideology. In light of this, businesses have shifted their focus towards sustainable production, the use of the sustainable materials, and the promotion of the sustainable consumption, thus creating a new pattern for business promotion and new product development. However, the core nature of consumerism still revolves around the pursuit of mass production and consumption, leading to inevitable pollution and waste. Therefore, some large companies have devised methods such as greenwashing to conceal and falsify their emission data to persuade environmentally conscious consumers to purchase their products. So, can these measures taken by businesses truly achieve a balance between consumerism and environmentalism? As consumers, how can we contribute to promoting such a balance in our daily life? Please keep these questions in your mind and let's invite Richard to start our journey today.
Thank you, Liz. As mentioned, several factors will influence consumerism's narrative against the promotion of environmentalism. As a result, businesses have adopted several methods to build their reputation on protecting the environment while continuing their business with high pollution. One of the most typical examples businesses apply to conceal and eradicate their emission data is greenwashing. Apparently, corporations are afraid of losing consumers. So, as Dr. Richard Norman mentioned in his article, that the oil, mining, and gas industry find a trend that may align more closely with greenwashing and public relations strategies for corporations than a genuine commitment to social and environmental justice. In this first argument, I'll discuss an indispensable factor that will guide the consumerism narrative by the corporations towards a more environmental way with policies and laws, which is the government. Governments are widely perceived as the authorities of society, and their vision and attitude toward future development greatly impacts the company's decisions on environmental protection and sustainable expansion. Capitalism and environmentalism are two opposing forces. Companies and governments should have a long-term view and management of the dangers associated with unsustainable practices to integrate them into their processes and actions. Business executives and political leaders usually adopt both short-term and profit-motivated decisions. On the other hand, environmental considerations and sustainable development require precautionary measures that are usually not rewarded by the capitalist system to force businesses and corporations onto a more sustainable and environmentally friendly track, even though the companies may sacrifice part of their benefits as a tuition for this progress. The Industrial Revolution has excessively accelerated progress of production efficiency, but meanwhile, much more pollution and emissions. Historically, the federal government of Canada and the provincial government have made several efforts to make laws to transform modes of production and the legislation on environmentalism. From the federal government, in 1999, the federal government released the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, as called CEPA. The law is Canada's primary environmental regulation statute and establishes the federal authority to regulate a broad range of environmental concerns, especially on toxic substances and greenhouse gas emissions. There are also several regulations under CEPA that regulate different aspects of environmental issues. Firstly, the National Pollutant Release Inventory, NPRI, as authorized by CEPA, makes the reporting of emissions mandatory where the amount of emissions is equal to or in excess of the reporting threshold, and where one or more of the substances emitted is included in the NPRI substances list. Any facility required to report its emissions must submit a detailed account to Environment and Climate Change Canada, and this information is accessible to the public. The Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, the GPPA, implements the federal carbon pollution pricing system, with minimum standards that apply any province or territory that does not have its own. Sufficiently strict carbon pricing legislation. This law also regulates greenhouse gas emissions in certain sectors, including the Clean Fuel Regulation, which require liquid fossil fuel, including both gasoline and diesel, suppliers to gradually reduce the carbon intensity of the fuels they produce and sell for use in Canada. Aside from these laws, there are also regulations that apply to fisheries, the use and emission of pesticides, and the transportation of dangerous goods. To briefly conclude, the CEPA has generally regulated a series of primary sectors in fundamental aspects and created a model for the provinces to apply their environmental laws based on their needs and concerns. From the provincial government's perspective, as though the definitions of certain terminologies and definitions differ, there are several overlapping aspects that provincial governments put their focus on. The matters under provincial jurisdiction notably include air emissions, water and wastewater treatment and discharges, water withdrawals, waste management, the release of contaminants, including issues relating to contaminated lands and brownfield redevelopment, pesticide use, underground and above-ground storage tanks, hazardous materials and the residual hazardous material management, and the transportation of dangerous substances. There are two most important laws under provincial regulation: environmental assessment laws and emission source investigation. Several provinces also have environmental assessment laws, so the details of which vary from province to province. In Ontario, environmental assessment legislation primarily applies to public sector undertakings. However, significant private sector undertakings may be required to undergo a comprehensive environmental assessment in order to identify and evaluate the need for the undertaking, the alternatives to the undertaking, and alternative methods of accomplishing the undertaking. For emissions, a new emission source or facility that may impact the environment typically requires environmental approval, which may be subject to strict conditions. Existing sources of emission may also be subject to further controls through the issuance of administrative orders. So far, we have gone through a recap of how governments have legislated and regulated corporations to evolve their actions on their carbon footprint, emissions, and environmental protection. Not only to comply with these laws, the corporations now have to switch their promotional narrative from production to environmental commitment. For example, the oil and mining companies in Canada used to promote how many buckets of oil they could extract every year, or the expansion of the company year by year. But with these environmental regulations, they have to switch the promotion to their commitment to the environment and their plan for the future development on environmental protection. The example I'm about to introduce is much closer to us, the consumers, and the transformation in the consumerism narrative has not only changed our living style, but also revolutionized the public awareness towards pollution, waste treatment, and individual influence on the environment, which is plastic bags. Since the 1970s, plastic shopping bags have become an omnipresent product found in every corner of the world, produced at a rate of up to 1 trillion bags per year. As the chemical compound polyethylene was created, it was widely used as the most common plastic because of its low production cost. Compared to paper bags, which were previously used by European families, plastic bags are more elastic, waterproof, and easier to carry. It can be used for multiple purposes and carry more stuff than paper bags, such as this slogan on the plastic bag: "The second feature is here for you today." In 1979, already controlling 80% of the bag market in Europe, plastic bags began to spread to the United States and other countries around the world. Plastic companies have begun to aggressively market their single-use product as superior to paper and a reusable bag. By the end of the 1980s, plastic bags will have almost entirely replaced paper bags around the world, and by 2011, about 1 million plastic bags are consumed every minute worldwide. The researchers found that things got a bit different. In 1997, researchers discovered that Great Pacific Garbage Patch, where immense amounts of plastic waste have accumulated threatening marine life. This immense collection of marine litter and plastic pollution showcases the long-lasting and harmful effects of single-use plastic products that affect the natural environment. As a result, in October 2020, Environment and Climate Change Canada and Health Canada jointly issued a report called Science Assessment of Plastic Pollution, which studies the scope of plastic waste in Canada. In this report, researchers found that by 2016, about 47% of plastic waste in Canada comes from packaging, and a significant portion of it is single-use. The sources of plastic pollution, according to the report, could derive from accidents, abandonment, deliberate disposal, litter, or plastic landfills. These pollutions are applied to land, which is the landfill of the plastic packaging, sea, which is the disposal of plastic products into the ocean, and air, which is the burning of plastics. Due to plastic's specific chemical composition, it takes a tremendously long time for nature to degrade, and during this process, if marine life takes too much of its plastic bags, the congestion in their stomach will greatly shorten their life expectancy. The landfills of plastic products are constantly harming the growth of plants where the leak of chemical composition from the plastic products into the surrounding soil, which can then seep into the groundwater or other surrounding water sources, and also the ecosystem. Plastics block sunlight and prevent photosynthesis from taking place of the plants. With the assessment of plastic waste and its influence on the environment, the federal government released the Single-Use Plastics Prohibition Regulation, which prohibits the manufacture, import, and the sale of single-use plastic checkout bags, cutlery, food services were made from or containing problematic plastics, grain carriers, stir sticks, and straws, following a timeline that 6 scopes of plastic uses will be fully prohibited by the end of 2025. Although still charging the low-cost efficiency of plastic bags, major supermarket branches in Canada such as Sobeys, Metro, and Loblaws initiated their campaigns to eliminate the use of plastic bags for selling, and companies such as Tim Hortons stopped offering plastic straws and cutlery since early 2021. To cater to the customers who are not willing to use recycled bags, the supermarkets and the branches in Canada tend to use a more friendly and a close to people narrative to tell the customers how bad the plastic bags bring to the environment, and encourage more people and consumers to use recycled bags for their shopping as their narrative to encourage a more environmental friendly, sustainable living style. Yet the story is continuing. The prohibition of plastic bags is taking its effects. We're seeing less appearance of plastic use in markets, restaurants, and companies. Also, the narrative about the benefits of plastic use gradually diminished. Instead, we are witnessing more companies promoting net zero strategies, sustainability, and goodbye plastic bag campaign. There are also other environmental influences on aspects such as pollutant emissions, wastewater treatment, and garbage disposal. Among all these campaigns and actions, the policies and regulations of the government shall not be ignored, because which leads us as a guiding force on how to properly protect the environment and restore the glory the Mother Planet used to have. Thank you, and I'll pass my mic back to Liz.
Well, before we move on, I'd like to invite you to watch a video of Ford Corporate's strategy for sustainability in its automotive industry. Hope you'll enjoy it.
If you could solve Earth's problems with a violin score, a celebrity voiceover saying something profound yet relatable, a scene with small children playing in nature, we'd be just fine by now. But a sustainable future is going to take some work, which is what we do at Ford. Hard work, at scale, the kind of work that makes an impact. Transitioning more of our manufacturing to renewable carbon-free electricity, saving billions of gallons of water, working to reduce waste to zero, and incorporating sustainable materials in our vehicles. The kind of work that takes patience, persistence, and grit. That takes learning, innovation, and a multitude of people, families, and communities. Work that drives change. That's how we've driven progress the last 120 years. Sometimes slowly, other times in the blink of an eye. And that's how we'll continue building a better world together. That's the road we're on at Ford. The road to better.
Actually, I really love the idea of the road to better. It shows that Ford Corporate adopts eco-friendly materials and sustainable production methods to reduce its negative impact on the environment, especially the care of our future. As the video says that we'll be fine just right now, but the sustainable future is going to take some work. Ford indeed took some actions to create a situation where consumerism and environmentalism could coexist peacefully. For example, Ford's commitment to environmental sustainability is evident in its comprehensive strategies aimed at addressing key areas contributing to carbon emissions and environmental impact. Let's take a look at some outstanding strategy first. The climate change strategy. Ford's commitment to carbon neutrality by 2050 focuses on three major contributors to carbon dioxide emissions: vehicles, operations, and the supply chain. The company recognizes that approximately 95% of its carbon emissions comes from these areas. This strategy aligns with science-based targets and encompasses a holistic approach to reducing emissions. The second one, the sustainable materials strategy, which I would like to consider the most crucial one. Ford aims to reduce waste and lower the need for new materials by incorporating recycled and renewable materials into its vehicles. The company aspires to use 20% recycled or renewable plastics in new vehicle designs for North America and Europe by 2025 and 10% for China. Some other strategies, like the energy strategy, water strategy, and waste strategy, also helped a lot. For instance, Ford aims to accomplish this by incorporating a blend of renewable energy sources such as wind, solar power, nuclear, and hydro into its operations. It integrates water-efficient process and technologies into its manufacturing systems, demonstrating its commitment to reducing water use and reserving fresh water exclusively for human consumption. Besides, Ford is dedicated to proactive waste management, striving for true zero waste to landfill globally. Within these efforts, Ford indeed shows some great results, as reflected by the healthy performance of the South America and International Market Group units in 2022, which both generated sustainable levels of profitability. In summary, Ford's commitment to carbon neutrality, substantial investments in zero-emission vehicles, and alignment with international agreements demonstrate its dedication to balancing consumerism with environmentalism. However, as we mentioned before, the core nature of consumerism still revolves around the pursuit of mass production and consumption. Companies can be environment-friendly in a capitalist society. However, this depends on the nature of product, service, and cost imperatives. Therefore, being environmentally friendly while keeping consumerism seems paradox sometimes. The instance of greenwashing in the corporate world serve as glaring examples of how companies attempt to make profits through consumerism while acting like environmentalism. For example, Volkswagen's emissions scandal is a classical case of greenwashing. The company, known for its marketing emphasis on low emission and eco-friendly features, was exposed for cheating emission tests. Volkswagen fitted certain vehicles with a defect device that could detect when it was undergoing an emissions test. The software altered the vehicle's performance during the test to reduce emissions artificially. While the public was led to believe in the environmental friendliness of Volkswagen vehicles, the reality was starkly different. Thus, manipulated engines were emitting pollutants, particularly nitrogen oxide, up to 40 times that allowed limit. This intentional deception reveals how the company prioritized profit over environmental responsibility, betraying the trust of consumers. In short, such practice erodes public trust and highlights the importance of investigating corporate claims to ensure they align with genuine efforts towards sustainability. It also reminds us to think of the question that how to improve the transparency for companies to bridge the gap between consumerism and environmentalism.
In our consumer world today, especially within capitalist culture, the driving forces behind dominant norms can be traced to the fusion of technological innovations with the rise of social cultural values centered on fashion. Due to social and cultural perspectives, consumer cultures have led to materialistic norms for people, where people's material objects could reflect individual histories and preferences. Fast fashion is a typical example of how companies are promoting consumer behaviors to purchase small products. Fast fashion basically is all about those clothes that are produced quickly and cheaply, following the current trend that people like and then rush into the store. Fast fashion operates on its quick cycle of designing, producing, distributing, and marketing clothing. This pushes out massive quantities of a wide range of products, granting consumer access to abundant fashion choices and product variety, all at a cheap price. Zara, a fast fashion brand, often viewed as a pioneer of the fast fashion movement, has transformed our approach to clothing consumption. Yet, this fast fashion business model draws attention to its considerable environmental and social implications. Let's dive into how Zara has impact on both environment and us by watching a short video first.
Fast fashion is under fire for the mountains of waste it generates. Now Zara is pledging to get greener. Parent firm Inditex, the world's biggest fashion retailer, said Tuesday that it would work harder on sustainability. It says that by 2030 it will make all its garments from textiles that have a reduced impact on the environment. It says about 40% will come from recycled fibres. A quarter will come from next-generation materials in which it's investing. Another quarter will come from sustainably farmed crops. And the rest will come from other sustainable sources.
From this video, we could see that Zara shows that they are reducing textile waste, but the real deal is that they are producing almost 450 million pieces each year and providing consumers with over 500 new styles every single week. This amount of production is way beyond the average fast fashion company. Zara is still using materials that are super cheap like nylon into its production, and thus it has a lower quality of the final product. The materials are strongly related to the environment because their synthetic materials are made from a kind of fossil fuel. As we all know, the emission of fossil fuels is a key factor in climate change. When fossil fuels are burned into the air, a large amount of carbon dioxide is released, and these greenhouse gases can result in more heat in the atmosphere, finally causing global warming. In addition to global warming, synthetic materials can also release toxic pollutants into the environment because they are made of harmful materials. Our lovely oceans are receiving about 500,000 tons of microplastics decomposed from synthetic material each year. Therefore, it's important to raise awareness that the fashion industry is causing about 20% of all water pollution all over the world. Although some clothing and fashion companies are selling products while potentially damaging the environment, Nike is doing its action to change the material of the products and make them more sustainable and recycled. Let's watch a video talking about how Nike is doing its job in making more sustainable products.
We hear it from our athletes all the time. Climate change has altered their lives, how they train, how they compete. At Nike, we are relentlessly focused on helping our athletes succeed amidst this global crisis, while also doing our part to combat it. From apparel that can handle the heat to footwear made from waste and other sustainable materials. The fact is, the future of sport depends on a healthy planet, and protecting that future requires real, scalable action. Protecting our planet is one of our key priorities across all three of our brands, Nike, Jordan, and Converse. We combine our culture of innovation with our size and scale to amplify incremental change and make it significant. Today, for example, we're now using 100% renewable energy in our owned and operated facilities in the US and Canada. And by 2025, our goal is to be at 100% renewable energy in all of our facilities worldwide. By moving to zero, we know we can help move the world. And that's why, driven by our bold targets, we are more committed than ever to help save the planet. This is the urgency of the moment, and we're eager to share our experience and knowledge and to explore more ways to drive collective action. Sport should always have a future, and at Nike, we will never stop striving for better.
So what Nike does is to introduce new programs that empower people to recycle goods and to make their lives longer before taking them back to give them a new start. Now I'm going to connect all we talked about, the consumer culture, the companies, to the idea of eco-self. First, let me introduce the idea of eco-self. It's a concept which basically says we can connect with all living things and expand our sense of self to include all the living organisms on our planet and even the Earth itself. Treating the environment as treating ourselves and thinking about the environment as one part of ourselves can change our perspective of the world. It's important to think about eco-self from the perspective of the company and consumer. As we talked about before, the promotion of consumer behaviors is causing more damage to the ecosystem. Therefore, reducing the consumer behavior of individuals becomes essential, particularly in the background of sustainability or responsible consumption. People should promote mindful and conscious choices in deciding what to buy. A reasonable suggestion includes recycling and reuse of goods to minimize waste. In short, if the companies and consumers work together and think about eco-self when producing and buying products, the ecosystem will be much better and be more sustainable.
Wonderful journey to discover the relationship between consumerism, its narrative, and environmentalism. We discovered the role of government in the effort to make laws and regulations to guide companies for good purpose. We studied case studies of both Ford and Volkswagen on their different commitments to environmentalism, which one fulfills the promise to protect the environment, the other applied greenwashing to cheat their customers. Finally, we came to know how mass production and closing companies such as Zara contributed to environmentalism and guide consumer values, pursuits, and achievements. Thanks so much for watching this presentation and hope you enjoyed it.